One of the most difficult lessons I have to convey in the aquascaping hobby is patience. And I don't really have a way to teach that to other people without sounding like I'm really self-aggrandizing and patting myself on the back. So I end up uploading videos like this of me doing my regular plant maintenance on my aquariums. This video here will feature a few of the plants and how I trim them back and how I continue to propagate them to a point where it's nice to take Instagram pictures, but it's also growing the ecosystem to a healthy point of balance between the many varieties of plants, fish, snails, and shrimp that I have living within this ecosystem. Hydrophila Pentathofida has always been, in my opinion, a wonderful addition whether you're a beginner, an expert, or intermediate person. I've never really told anybody to not get this plant. Unless you have just bizarro water conditions and you're not pre-filtering your water, that's the only time I would really see people running into serious problems. One thing I can say with regular water changes and just general upkeep, this plant does just grow kind of wildly out of control for me. As you can see, it is spreading out all over the rocks, it's sending runners all over the place, and it's generally encroaching on other plants that I would consider personally to be of higher value. Now, that's not to say that Hydrophila Pentathofida isn't a high value plant. I think it's a fantastic plant, but it's not a rare plant and it's not difficult for me to reproduce this plant. So that's generally where my consideration comes into play here, and I don't want it to stifle out other sort of more delicate and difficult to reproduce and difficult to purchase a replacement if I was to have those plants die off. All of these little runners have their own little root stocks to them. They're sending down roots, and they're going to become a full-grown plant eventually if I don't intervene and trim off these runners, because as I said, they will stifle out other plants and not allow them to grow and spread, which I need. Like the plants down in the front of the tank, I have that Cryptocorini Nurii Rosen Maiden, along with the Cryptocorini Jacobsenii, which those are both really rare to come across, to even just find some to buy. So I am sort of prioritizing certain plants in this tank because of those issues. Typically in what I would consider to be a display tank, I wouldn't have this many variety of plants, mainly because of this type of maintenance that needs to be done on a regular basis. In a display tank, say in the front of a store or something like that, I would limit the species to 3 to 5, kind of at most, and focus them in a way that would allow them to just spread throughout the tank and sort of just fight against each other to create a escape that way. Obviously, I'm constantly fiddling with this tank because I do have way too many species in here to just leave it alone and let that happen. Restricting the Pentathofida is actually quite simple. I just trim the runners off at the main stalk of the plant, wherever I don't want it to be going. It'll grow on rocks, it'll grow on substrate, it'll grow on wood, it'll grow just about anywhere. So I just go all the way back to the main stalk of the plant, trim those off, and remove all those plants. I generally will put them in a sump or something like that and sprout them out for a different system at some other point in time. Pulling plants out almost always freaks people out. They're like, oh my god, you're going to pull them all out. As you can see here with the Limnophylla rugosa, we have a little bit of a problem here. It has grown too tall, and now it's starting to send out all these little side shoots. Leaves down below are starting to die because they're completely shaded out. And that means I'm going to have to pull the entire plant out, trim off all the little plantlets that have started to send out aerial roots, and replant them into the substrate to allow them to regrow and not only maintain the ecosystem, but it will also maintain its photogenic quality, which means I'll be able to take pictures of it and just share the overall beauty minus that air quote natural part of the ecosystem with the die-off and things like that. The reason for that is an aquarium is an enclosed system. If I allowed the Limnophylla to grow to its fullest potential, it would eventually just grow out of the aquarium up into the air, and then I would have essentially a house plant inside of a giant pot of water that was clear that you could see through. Eventually, I would completely lose the aesthetic. So I'm always trying to find a balance between maintaining an ecosystem as natural as possible, but also being at the pinnacle of the beauty. So one of the ways that I can relate that would be having a flower garden. 9 months out of the year, a flower garden is just kind of greenery, and it's just sort of existing. But come spring into summertime, all of the flowers bloom. They're very beautiful, but that's just a part of the natural cycle. I don't want to have to embrace the entirety of the natural cycle because I'm looking to essentially maintain a blooming situation all of the time. That's what leads me and everyone else to having to do water changes on a regular basis. This system here is only getting a water change once every 2 to 3 weeks, which for me is actually a pretty high frequency. The reasoning behind that is that I do have a large mass of plant volume in my sumps. My sumps are how I filter my aquariums. I have a ton of plants down there, essentially scrubbing the water, and I could actually let it go much, much longer than that. But I am trying to maintain, to stay with the flowering garden metaphor, I'm trying to keep everything blooming all year round, which is why I have to do water changes. Otherwise, my system could just continue to run basically all year and not really require a water change, but I wouldn't be able to necessarily take all the photos and really videos and stuff like that of the aquarium because people would be more focused on the decay and things happening in a natural system like that than they would be the flower blooms, essentially, what I'm going for. I have tested this hypothesis on numerous occasions. I've allowed my systems to go all the way up to 9 months was the longest that I let one go to see how healthy the water would be for the fish, the overall care of plants and stuff like that. And eventually I run into algae situations that are not favorable to posting on social media or posting in a magazine or whatever. And while I do find that to be quite admirable, sticking with the natural style aquarium, I do have to kind of make money off of my aquariums. So I do maintain them in a system that allows me to be able to make videos and take pictures and stuff like that. You might be somebody who's interested in running your aquarium with never doing a water change and mainly just adding some water here and there in order to keep it healthy. I can say the way that my systems are set up, you could do that, but it would run into a problem of algae blooms and having to go through basically the winter of your aquarium and then come back into the spring again, and you'd basically be on an annual cycle. After all the things said in this video, it ultimately comes down to you and the reasons that you're running your aquarium to how you're going to run it. If you want to run it the way that I do, it's totally possible. If you want to run it as a natural aquarium, that's totally possible too. It's just more the end user's need and want and then enacting on it. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, patience is going to be the key for any way you run an aquascape. The ability to move plants around and then wait for them to recover 3-5 weeks, you know, sometimes it does get a little bit tedious. But one of the main reasons I'm able to do projects like this are from people that support the channel, like the Zombie Drummer. The Zombie Drummer has been supporting this channel for an extraordinary amount of time, and I do not want to not give him a shout out, because it's shout out August, I guess. I don't know. I'm probably just going to continue shouting out all of the awesome people one by one forever. And that is fine with me. I love doing it. Hey, Ryan, thank you very much for supporting the channel. I love it. If you want to become a supporter like the Zombie Drummer, you totally can. No real need to do it. There's the free thing you could always do, which is like and subscribe and leave a message that says poopy fart McPoop farts. I don't know. Or you could go over to Patreon, or you could hit the blue join button down there. I know it's a monetary thing. It's up to you. It's 2020. There's a freaking pandemic going on. It's the lowest pressure sale ever, because you can still watch it for free on YouTube, right? All right. That's it for today. I got to go to bed. I saw the giant spider today. Oh. Yep, it's up there in the corner, way far from you. Yikes.